Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic. A couple quick announcements. What we got here. We have hoodies available. If you want to purchase a hoodie, you can see me or any home group member after the meeting. This group is involved in service. We have hospitals and institutions commitments. If you're interested in doing that kind of thing, you can see me after the meeting. We have a running commitment that we do every Sunday night. It's in Doylestown. It's at 7 o'clock. So there's no requirement for amount of time. If you're just interested in coming out there, we go into a treatment center and, we just kind of deliver a message of hope and recovery. So again, if you're interested in doing that kind of thing, you can see me, you can see Ron, see any home group member after the meeting. With that, I'm going to give you a warm introduction to our chairperson tonight, the greatest chairperson in the world, JJ.
Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is JJ. I'm an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday night at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street, Doylestown, PA. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. and speaker comes on at 8:30. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 to 7:30 right here. Please come early and join us. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from this message. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone that's new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name only?
My name's John. I'm an alcoholic.
I'm Wendy. I'm an alcoholic.
Wendy, welcome. Hey, welcome, brother.
I'm Chris. I'm an alcoholic.
Chris, welcome. Welcome, everybody. Oh, sorry.
Matt, an alcoholic.
Hey, Matt. Welcome, man. Happy you're here. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Beautiful. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? All right. Our sister group is a big book study meeting that meets every Thursday, 7:30 p.m., just up the street at Salem UCC Church, 186 East Court Street, Doylestown. Coffee is on at 6:15. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help who can't afford them, you can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Books and CD Donations. All CDs are available free of charge. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, and our Facebook group. Subscribe and share. You can find our speakers there. Join our Facebook page to keep informed and share upcoming events and meetings. And now Dave is going to come up and read the preamble.
My name is Dave. I'm an alcoholic. Just for today, prayer of recovery. Just for today, I will be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. And now Tom is going to come up and read the preamble.
I'm Tom. I'm an alcoholic. The AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And with that, we're going to bring up Brian for the 12 steps of recovery.
Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic. These are the AA 12 steps of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and foreless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the results of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. And with that, I'm going to bring JJ back up here. He's going to introduce our speaker for tonight.
The seventh tradition, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, we would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover food, rent, big books, CDs, events, workshops, etc. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, a good friend of the Conscious Contact speaker group, Chris from Delaware, is going to come up here. So Chris, come on up, man.
Hi family, I'm Chris and I'm an alcoholic. Hey Chris. And just want to apologize for not being in a suit, shirt, or tie. Was not aware. And it wasn't meant as any disrespect to this group, but the message is still the message regardless of how a person is dressed. I want to thank the Conscious Contact group for providing me the opportunity to be able to carry a message of recovery. I want to thank everybody for being here, because without you, there is no me. Regardless of the fact I'm from Delaware, we're all connected, right? In some way, shape, or form, regardless of what our differences may be. There's more similarities than differences. I hate speaking in front of large groups, so I'm just putting that out there. So if you see me twitching around a little bit, that's the reason why. I'm really good in smaller situations where it's with a sponsee or like 3 or 4 people. I'm very passionate, animated. When it comes to this, I normally just try to pretend that nobody's in the room to help me get through it. Not because I'm worried about what you guys are going to think about me or think about what I say. It's just a thing that I have. With that being said, let me just qualify myself first. Once I start, I can't stop. And if I can stop, I can't stay stopped for long. I have this phenomenon of craving and this mental obsession that takes hold of me as it relates to alcoholism. I do have experiences in other things besides alcohol, but in respect to the traditions, my message is strictly be on alcohol and alcoholism. All right. My sobriety date is, I always have to think about this for some reason, is November 11th of 2016. I am so grateful to have a sobriety date again, because I never thought I would make it back to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. This isn't my first trip in AA. I did have long-term sobriety at one point in time. When I say long-term sobriety, we're talking over double digits of sobriety. I stopped living this program, and I ended up relapsing and taking a drink. So I never thought I would get the opportunity to be back in Alcoholics Anonymous again, and for that I am grateful. I do have a sponsor. He knows he's my sponsor because he has taken me through all 12 steps, all 12 traditions, and all 12 concepts. And we talk 3 to 4 times a week, regularly. Still, over 7 years later, we talk 3 to 4 times a week. Sometimes it's to do a 10-step. Sometimes it's just to stay connected, right? Because that's very important. We're supposed to walk shoulder to shoulder on this path. I do have sponsees who I've also taken through the steps, traditions, and concepts. My home group is the More Be Revealed group. We meet in Wilmington, Delaware at Mount Salem United Methodist Church in a park called Rockford Park. If you guys ever get the chance, feel free to visit. And with that being said, as I already stated, I never thought I'd make it back into Alcoholics Anonymous again. Prior to this sobriety period, I was on a four and a half year run where I was just consumed in the grips of alcoholism. And even though that I knew that there was an AA program and I had been a part of it for a really long time, left to my own devices, I was lost. And there's nothing worse than feeling like you had a lottery ticket and then you just blew the lottery ticket. And that's honestly how I felt at one point in time. Prior to coming into Alcoholics Anonymous this time around, I was consistently in the grips of self, consistently in the grips of fear, self-delusion, self-pity, suffering, and not just the suffering that I felt inside, but the suffering that I was creating in others by being an active alcoholic and my behaviors and how I treated people or how I didn't treat people. Utter case of hopelessness. And to me, there's really no worse feeling in the world than being trapped in a hamster wheel of misery, suffering, pain, and utter hopelessness. Right? The best way I can compare it is I was a living dead person. Wasn't living to live. I was basically surviving to drink. And I'll never forget when I had relapsed after being sober for a long time. I had the same sponsor for that length of period. I had guys that I was sponsoring for years and years. And when I got completely disconnected from AA, and it was a 5-week window for me. That's all it took, 5 weeks. I'm not saying that's going to be other people's experiences. I'm just saying for me, it was a 5-week window where I went from being as close to the center of AA as I could be to completely on the outskirts of AA. So when all of a sudden, this obsession that I hadn't experienced in 12 years, when it came back, I had no mental defense against that first drink. Right? It talks about in the book, and some people call it playing the tape. In the book, it tells us that doesn't work. Right? I thought of the consequences that were going to come my way. It was quickly supplanted with the obsession and the desire to drink. I knew I was about to flush everything away. Only thing that came to my mind 10 seconds later was to drink. I knew I could have easily called my sponsor. I knew I could have easily went to a meeting again, or go to a meeting. I know I could have reached out to a sponsee, could have been the service, could have brought God into it, but because I was so disconnected for 5 weeks, I had no mental defense. And that those thoughts, that knowledge that avails us nothing that the book talks about, with that knowledge, it was gone within 15 seconds, because when the obsession is on me, the obsession is on me. And if I have no program of action that I'm living in, I have no defense. And so I ended up drinking, and I basically packed my stuff up at 1 o'clock in the morning. I was living in South Florida, which I lived there for 13 years. I've also lived in California in recovery. I packed up my stuff at 1 o'clock in the morning, right? Because that great thought process when you're in active alcoholism is, I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to be I let down a whole bunch of people. I didn't want anybody to know, and I didn't want anybody to get in the way of my next drink. So I left. I fled at 1 o'clock in the morning, packed my car up, and drove back up to Delaware. Which in hindsight 2020, I'm grateful I did, because that's what got me to where I am today. Right? And I didn't tell anybody I was leaving. And it was a 4.5 year burn and churn. And eventually, I want to say June of 2016, I was tired of praying for death. Because I was praying for death because I never thought I'd get sober again. and I'm just a wreck inside, right? And I have nobody on the outside because I've been a wreck to people on the outside that they don't want anything to do with me anymore, to where I attempted suicide. That was my solution, because I thought if I would kill myself, that would provide the freedom from active alcoholism. And so, and for anybody that's in here, it's like, oh, I can't relate to that. I never tried to commit suicide. Yes, you have. Yes, you have. Drinking every day is killing yourself. That's not living. All right? It's a slow, painful death, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So, just trying to create a similarity between my experience and maybe some of you out there, right? So I took these things to commit suicide, and it worked, but somebody ended up finding me about 250 yards away from where I did it at. And they resuscitated me back to life, and I'll never forget it. I came to with a broken nose in 4 spots, because I did a face plant into a marble countertop that was 2 inches thick. Broke my nose in 4 spots, teeth blown all over the place, mouth cut in half, inside of my mouth cut in half, but I'm still having work done to fix all this, all these years later. I come to, bloody mess. I didn't care about the broken nose. I didn't care about the teeth being all over the place. I felt even much deeper hopelessness, because I was like, oh my God, I'm still alive and stuck as an active alcoholic. And I tried it again, like a couple days later. Thankfully, it didn't work. That didn't stop me from drinking. Finally, 6 months later, actually, right before I did that, because this is part of my recovery story, right before I did that, I had called I didn't know anybody in Delaware in AA. I didn't know many people in Delaware, period. Somebody had given me another person's phone number and was like, hey, this person's in Alcoholics Anonymous. Their name was Oliver. You know Oliver? Maybe he could help you. And I reached out to him, and I was completely 3 sheets to the wind when I did. And I was like, hey, man, just wanted to reach out to you. I was like, I was in sobriety or in recovery before for quite a bit of time, and I'm on a run. And he's like, well, I'll give you a ride. Come back into AA. It works. Exactly what a person's supposed to do that's in AA, right? This isn't good for you, And I was just like, I'm not, I want to, but I'm not ready yet. Okay? So fast forward November of 2016, I finally had all hope beaten out of me, right? Because for an alcoholic like myself, if I feel even 2% hope, I'll still hold on and fight, right? And not only that, I have no defense anyway, because my will is to drink, right? My alcoholism makes me do things against my will, because there's plenty of times I wanted to truly stop, in here and in here, but I didn't take any action. And for a person like myself, and I'm sure some of you guys have had these same experiences, we all get these windows of opportunity in our drinking periods at different points in time, where the head and the heart matches up. It's like, I honestly don't want to live this way anymore. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to do this anymore. But if you don't take action within that small window of opportunity, it gets blotted out by the obsession to drink, right? That's been my experience. So it's November 2016. I'm finally like, I'm done. Like, just done. I can't keep going on like this. I can't keep fighting, nor do I want to. And I didn't want to go to a treatment center. I didn't want to go to a halfway house. I just wanted to come back into Alcoholics Anonymous, because when I did that before, this is no offense to treatment centers, this is no offense to halfway houses, that's not a part of my story. My story is detoxing and cold turkey and coming directly into AA at the same time. But I was so sick at the time that I was just like, I don't know if that's possible, because I made some attempts that didn't last. So I was like, I know, I have a capias out on me for a $200 court cost that I never paid, because I kept lying to the judge for a year and a half about why I couldn't pay it, and it was because I wanted to drink, right? So I ended up calling the police department and turning myself in. I had them come get me because I was too lazy to go there. And I felt very solid about that leading up to that phone call. I felt very solid and at ease with making that phone call. As soon as I made that phone call and was off the phone call and knew that they were on their way to come get me, I was like, oh my God, did I just do the right thing? Did I do the right thing? Let me just get a little bit more in. And they came and got me. And I remember we arrived to the jail, and I had to sit outside the gates of the prison until they opened the gates up. And I'll never forget it. And it still moves me to this day, right? The God of my understanding had been there the whole entire 4.5 years of that relapse. I wasn't present. I wasn't a participating member with that relationship. As I'm sitting at the prison gates waiting for them to open, I'll never forget, the hairs on the back of my neck started to stand up. I got chills and goosebumps, and the realization and just this warm feeling, and I've never been able to duplicate it, it just happened. This warm feeling rushed over me that I was going to be okay. Because it was like, oh my God, here's the opportunity I've been looking for. It's finally here. I have a shot. I don't know what the shot's going to look like, but I truly have a shot. And my plan was, which the best laid out plans in my case are the ones that don't happen. My plan was to go, let them take me in. I'd get 3 days there because it was a Friday night. I was like, I'll see the judge on Monday, and then I'll just come right back into Alcoholics Anonymous. Because that was my true intention. Realistically, that probably wouldn't have worked out that way. Maybe it would have, because I'm not God. But maybe it wouldn't have. What ended up happening instead is I'm there Friday night in a psych ward, Saturday, Sunday, Monday in a psych ward with 5 other people in a very small room, no windows, not allowed out. I got a guy who's talking to the wall because he's literally psychologically has something going on, and I'm detoxing, and it was great. And recommend it. Not really. And I'm sitting there and I'm detoxing. I go see the judge, and it's not my judge, it's some other judge, and he's literally like, you're here because you have a $200 capias. And I'm like, well, let me pay it. And he's like, well, you can't. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, your judge basically wants to see you in person. I had no idea why. I'm like, okay, well, why am I not seeing him? And he's like, he's on vacation. Because it was the month of Thanksgiving, so I figured, maybe a week and a half he'd be out. I'm like, okay, well, how long is that going to be? And he's like, oh, he's not going to be back until December 8th. And I literally spent what was supposed to be a weekend to basically 4 weeks in solitary confinement, because one of my jobs, secondary jobs, was working for Homeland Security and a joint task force. So for my protection, they put me in solitary confinement. And it was the best thing for me, because in that moment, I was able to reconnect with the God of my understanding. I was able to reflect on a lot of mistakes that I made in recovery. And just a lot of one-on-one quality time with the God of my understanding, praying and meditating. So needless to say, I come out and I text this gentleman, Oliver, who I've never even met. And I was like, hey man, I just got out of jail. It's the guy that had 12 years sober, lived in Florida, just so he could hopefully remember me. And I was like, I've been sober for 30 plus days. I'd like to go to a meeting and get a sponsor and get reconnected. And he called me. He actually didn't call me. He texted me back and was like, hey, I'll pick you up at 6 o'clock and we'll go to a meeting. That's the love of Alcoholics Anonymous. You do not find that type of selfless love at a bar, right? And that started my journey back in AA. And got a sponsor, got a home group right away, started being of service to that home group, whether it was setting chairs up, breaking chairs down, greeting people at the door, and started this whole entire process over again. And it's been one heck of a ride. And, get back into the book and start reconnecting with the book again. And not only reconnecting with the book, but also having a bunch of new experiences with the book, right? And taking the steps with my sponsor. And the one thing that I'll say is that with with this program of action that we have, taking the steps is the easiest part of it all. Taking it and applying it and living it is where the true work comes in. Because anybody can read a book, anybody can talk about a book, right? It's about living it. Two different things. I can sit here and quote the big book to you in many different ways, but if I'm not living it, then what good is it? Right? It's important to have an understanding of what's in there, but what's even more important, especially when you're being sponsored, is for a sponsor to help connect the dots of that understanding, so that way you can then put it into practical application at once. And then you're supposed to grow with that understanding, right? I've been sober for over 7 years, but I still am a newcomer. Every day that I wake up, I am a newcomer. Every day that I wake up, I have to reconnect with the God of my understanding, with these steps, with these traditions, with these concepts, being of service, fellowshipping, meetings, right? Sponsorship, right? The God of my understanding. My program isn't based off of one thing, it's all those elements. And all those elements are very important because they're all connective tissue to each other, right? And if I take one of those pieces out, it can easily have a bleed over effect into other areas of my program. That's just the truth, right? I didn't just get reconnected to God off of just being like, No, it was through sponsorship, steps, service, fellowshipping, meetings, right? Change, right? And, this whole step process has been a beautiful journey, and it's an ever-evolving journey. I had my first step experience in prison, right? Because the first step tells me I'm going to drink again, right? Left to my own devices, right? I have to sit here and make it a conscious, innermost understanding that I am powerless, right? And that my life is unmanageable, all right? And not just unmanageable from drinking. My life was unmanageable because I was the one trying to manage my life, right? And the true test of whether or not, for me, in my experience, I'm not saying this has to be anybody else's thought process, but the true knowledge of whether I've done a very thorough first step to the best of my ability will show in my actions. Not because I say I'm powerless over alcohol and my life's unmanageable, right? Because if I truly believe that and feel that, my actions will show. Am I connected to AA and all the parts of AA? Or am I sitting here choosing, like, I'll do this, but I won't do that. Maybe I'll manage my own step process. There's no, that's saying you have power, right? And I am so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous also teaching me that alcohol was not the problem. I'm the problem. And alcohol is the solution that I run to, right? Because ultimately, the doctor's opinion tells me point blank, I'm outright mental defective, I'm a fool of life from reality, and I'm maladjusted to life, right? Outright mental defective, my thinking is broke. Fool of life from reality, I don't like to feel and deal with life on life's terms, right? Maladjusted to life means I just don't know how to live, right? Don't know how to live. And prior to coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, if you would have asked me, Chris, what's your problem? I would have been like, it's the fact I was molested as a kid by 4 different people over a few-year period. It would be because I ended up in an orphanage by the time I was 2. It would be because I was beaten and abused in foster homes. That's all BS. Those are all just excuses. Right? That's what I would have told you prior to coming into Alcoholics, the reason why I drank. Right? But let's look at it from a common sense perspective. There's plenty of people out there that have had the same experiences that I've had that did not become alcoholics. So is it really the alcohol, or is it the way I react and deal with life? Right? And that was a mind-blowing experience because I was a victim for everything. I'm no longer a victim of anything, right? Step 2, came to believe in a power greater than myself. You know, I had already had, obviously, some kind of a belief in a power greater than myself from my previous experience. But the truth is that I didn't have a relationship with it for a period of time. So coming back into AA and working through that step, it's like, if I connect to this power greater than myself, which cannot be me, I can be restored to sanity. And what's sanity? It doesn't mean I'm going to be perfect. It doesn't mean I'm going to think greatly. But there's going to be a major shift in my thinking and living and reactions to life. Right? For some people, step 2, all that has to be could be AA. The steps are a power greater. It could be a multitude of different things as long as it's not you. Right? But what good is the belief if you don't actually solidify the relationship? That's the connective tissue between 2 and 3. Right? I can have a belief that if it's raining outside, an umbrella will keep me dry. Right? Common sense, 101. But what good is that belief if I go outside without an umbrella? That belief is no good. I got to have a living, breathing relationship. That's where the true connective tissue is. Right? And step 3, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him. You know, whether it's me, whether it's anybody in this room, the great thing is God as you understood Him. That understanding doesn't even have to amount to a lot in the beginning. Right? Because more of it's revealed as you go further through the steps what that is anyway. And if you can understand the God of your understanding so great, your God's not big enough in the first place. Right? And, you know, it was put very simply to me, you know, by my sponsor. It's something that I could easily sign up with, because it was like, well, what does, you know, turn your will and your life over mean? Well, my will in early recovery, you know, just coming into AA is to drink. My life is everything in between the drinks. Right? And making a decision to have an active, living, breathing relationship with whatever that God of that understanding is. Whether it's God, as they say in church, whether it's Mother Nature, whether it's your own conception, whether it's energy, whether it's the group, whatever it is. The great thing is there's so much freedom there, it doesn't have to be the same for every single person. Right? And also there was something explained to me pretty early on too, which really helped me, because sometimes one of the things you hear at meetings, and it always makes me scratch my head sometimes, but it is what it is that statement, oh, I took my will back. That's junk. Will is always there, right? My sponsor broke it up to me that there's self-will, there's free will, and there's God's will. Self-will is always here, but what I have is the free will to choose to either act on self or bring God in. Right? And in, you know, step 3 this time around was a little bit hard. Not the decision of all that jazz, but the actual practice of starting to pray on a regular basis again. Right? I'm not a prayer in general. Like, I only learned how to pray in AA, but I had to get back up on the horse because I'd been so disconnected from it. So praying every day. Not praying about myself, but praying about bringing God in and how can I be useful to other people. And it took a little bit of practice, right? Sometimes I would do it 5 days a week. Sometimes it was 7. Sometimes it would be 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And of course, I can create a lot of pain between the time I wake up and 12 o'clock in the afternoon. But the key is like no matter what, I just kept practicing and practicing until all of a sudden it becomes secondhand nature to do it first thing in the morning. And also to do it throughout the day, because I have to turn my will and my life over sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. Right? I'm a human being who is flawed. And, you know, if I'm going to sit here and have a living, breathing relationship with the God of my understanding, then obviously I need to do a step 4. Because I need to learn what things have been blocking me off from the God of that understanding in the first place. And I can't do that without doing some inventory. Right? And for me, the step 4 is the most easiest step there is. And some people are like, oh my God, did he just say that? Yes, it is, because all the information's already right here. You ask me what I'm angry about. If we're not even talking about recovery stuff, right, in general, in life, at any point in time in my life, you ask me what I was angry about, I'd tell you. If you ask me what I was scared about, I would tell you. If you ask me about sexual experiences, I'd probably tell you. If you're a close friend of mine, right? I'm not really a kiss and tell person, but I would still talk about stuff. But the point is like, it's all right here. The uncomfortable part is just letting it out for the world to see. Why? Because I don't want the world to see me. But if I want to have this chance for sobriety, and not just physical sobriety, because physical sobriety to me means absolutely nothing. It's great, but it's a byproduct of what I'm supposed to be aiming for, which is spiritual sobriety, emotional and mental sobriety. And I'm never going to be perfectly spiritually, emotionally, and mentally sober. But I have a responsibility to put the legwork in to try to get to the best that I can possibly get. And with step 4, the information's there. It's just uncomfortable. Right? Because once I start putting everything down, I start to truly see how great I'm not. Right? But in turn of doing that, I start seeing things a little bit differently. Now, mind you, a self-appraisal is insufficient, right? Because I can see whatever I want to see. But in writing stuff down, looking at all the resentments, looking at the fears, sex conduct, harms, all that jazz, I start to see, in all these people I was resentful at, that, hey, I am exactly like them in some way, shape, or form. Spiritually sick, right? But I've done a lot of those things. Or possibly, if I haven't done the same things that I experienced, I at least created the same emotions and feelings to other people in my life, in some way, shape, or form. And in seeing that, I started to see how fancy most of my resentments were. There was a couple real ones, but then even with those couple real ones, I realized that I'd been holding on for it way longer than I should have, and I didn't offer forgiveness, and I failed to look at these people as being spiritually sick. And all of a sudden, when that change and that shift in how I saw things started, all of a sudden those resentments started to melt away. A lot of them melted away right then and there. Some took a little bit of time. Right? And I start to see all these things. And another big piece of the pie is for every single resentment, every single fear, every single sex conduct, every single harm, there is one common denominator, even though there was a ton of different things on there. And that common denominator was me. Me. So is it really the world that's messed up? Or is it me? Right? And in doing this, I get cracked open a little bit more, and God comes in a little bit more. Right? Freedom starts to come in a little bit more. Hope starts to become a little bit bigger. Love, thinking of others more instead of myself starts to become a little bit more. But again, self-appraisal is insufficient. Right? And here comes step 5. And my sponsor opens me up to an even bigger world of what was on my paper. And some things I didn't even see. Right? And the great thing is we connected on a lot of it because he shared some of his stuff. I feel it's very important in sponsorship. Don't just talk about when you do things that are good. Share when you make mistakes. Share why you made the mistakes, and then what corrective action should be taken or that you did take. So that way we can grow from each other. All right? And it just opened up a whole new world doing a fifth step, and it even created a deeper crack in me that I needed to have in order for God and love and freedom and some more peace of mind to come in, right? But it was uncomfortable. It was, right? But I needed that uncomfortability, because if I didn't have that uncomfortability, I would not have followed through with 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And you do the hour reflection on things, and then we went straight into 6 and 7. And 6 is we're entirely ready to have these defects removed. That doesn't mean that they're going to be removed right then and there. It just means, are you at a place where you're entirely ready to have these defects of character removed because they're not serving me? They're not serving other people well, right? Do I want to continue to live this way, or do I want to change and grow? And for me, I want it to change and grow. And, 6 is such a major important step of this process. They say 6 and 7 is the meat and potatoes of the steps. Why? Because everything about me is driven by either my defects of character or by my assets. It's just fact, right? So yeah, I was entirely ready to have them removed. Now, I'm not responsible for them being removed. I'm only responsible for trying to help take action for them to be removed with the God of my understanding and through these steps and with you guys, right? I'm responsible for the action, not the results. And then we get to 7, right? Obviously, I can't remove these things, but who can? The God of my understanding. And the God of my understanding doesn't just talk to me directly. The God of my understanding talks through the steps, talks through you guys, talks through Mother Nature, and it talks through everything. And I know that the God of my understanding can remove defects of character from me when he deems them to not be useful at that moment. Right? Because I don't know which ones are useful at any given moment and are not useful. Right? I just know I don't have the ability to remove them myself. But I do have a responsibility. To create an environment for the God of my understanding to be able to come in and work his magic, or her magic, or its magic. Right? Doesn't say God works for me. The big book says I work for the God of my understanding. Right? He's the employer, I'm the employee. He's the director, I'm the student. Right? So I have to have it's a dance, that relationship. And the God of my understanding is always willing to dance. But I always have to be willing to dance back. Right? And because it's a partnership. It's a living, breathing relationship. And it changes regularly. You get to step 8. And I'm just doing little short abbreviations of the steps. I mean, there's so much more that could be talked about them. Right? Made us the people we had harmed became willing. It's a 2-parter. The easy part is the list being made. Because it's already made. 85% of mine was already made through my 4th and 5th step. Right? And I didn't even make it. It was made. If I say I mean we. Right? I just want to put this out here. There's nothing I can take credit for in my recovery that's positive. Anything I've experienced positive in my recovery is a direct result of this program and everything that it entails in the God of my understanding. Not because of me. The only thing I can take credit for in my recovery is the moments that I acted on self. Because that was all me. So the list part was easy. 85% of it was already made through 4 and 5. There was a few more things that got added to it that weren't associated with my 4th step. The willingness part came. That's the hard part of step 8. Not the list, but the becoming willing to me. Am I willing to go to people that I know hate me? Am I willing to go to people that I previously hated? Am I willing to step on the firing line and be able to take whatever they say to me? Am I willing to sit here? If I'm going to ask for forgiveness from these people, I should have already offered forgiveness in my 4th and 5th step, by the way. How dare I ask for forgiveness from somebody if I'm not willing to forgive? It's very hypocritical. There's nothing spiritual about that. So, am I willing to do whatever they say to make it right? Am I willing to make sacrifices on my wants to pay back financial amends? Right? Because I know a lot of people get to step 8, but yet instead of taking care of their financial amends, they're buying shoes, tattoos, whatever the case may be. I literally waited years before I could start the process of surgeries on my mouth. You know how embarrassing it was to walk around with no teeth? Well, bottom ones at least 4 or 5 anyway. For years. But it is what it is, because I had to make amends. All right? And I was willing. I was willing. Why? Because I saw how sick I was in step 4 and 5, and it was about time I started taking accountability to the people that I had caused harm to in some way, shape, or form, whether it was physical, financial, sexual, emotional, mental, whatever the case may be. There were 2 that were hard of having that willingness. And I'll never forget, I even told my sponsor, and there's a solution if you're not willing, too, that it says to do in the step, right? It's just to pray for more willingness and keep praying until all of a sudden you become willing. But there was 2 that I was struggling with, which was my biological father, who I only saw 3 times in my life, and my adoptive mother, who was already dead for like 10 years. And not because I knew I owed them an amends, right? For not offering forgiveness, not looking at them as possibly being spiritually sick in the moments that they had, right? It wasn't because I knew I owed them. There was some kind of blockage. And I'll never forget, I told my sponsor, who spoke here a few months ago, his name's Brendan M. He's on the YouTube thing, I think from like 4 or 5 months ago maybe. I remember telling him, I was like, it was so boneheaded of me to say this, but that's what you need a sponsor for, is to say boneheaded stuff too, so they can sit there and tell you the corrective action or point you out in the book. I was like, I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive him. So how am I going to ask for forgiveness if I'm not willing to forgive them? I know I owe them an amends, but I'm just not at that point yet. And he pointed to me, where it says about to pray for willingness. But then he also said to me, Chris, let me ask you a question. We both know you have a God of your understanding, right? I'm like, yes. And he's like, can you just give me some words that are associated with that? I'm like, yes, love, forgiveness, guidance. There's just a few of the words I can associate with it. He's like, do you think the God of your understanding loves them any less than he loves you? I was like, you're right. You're right. Right? You're right. And it took a month or 2 of consistently praying for the willingness, right? And then all of a sudden it just washed over me like, hey, I'm ready. Let's go do it. My sponsor went with me to the grave sites and, made a full-blown, it was a long list of things I had to make amends for. So, for anybody that's possibly sitting in this room that feels blocked from possibly making amends to somebody or thinking that's not true, the only one that's blocking is me, right? If you just keep trying, in spite of yourself at times, you can overcome anything with this program that we have. So getting to 9. 9 was just very quick for me, quick action that we took. We actually did all the hard ones within the first 2 days. When I say hard ones, there are no hard ones. What seems hard, let me rephrase that. The very gnarly looking ones that you have to make an amends for. Why? Because left to my own devices, I may procrastinate. Right? So it was like, hey, let's just jump on this. The ones that you think are the gnarliest, let's do them right now. And it's just boom, 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 boom. Right? And I went out and made amends. And some people accepted them. Or actually, not. A lot of people accepted them. There was a couple that didn't accept them. And it took 3 years before they did. Again, I am not responsible for the results of my amends, of how they turn out, because they're going to turn out how they're meant to. I'm responsible for just taking the action. And whatever comes, right? But I had a few that took a few years, and those were the guys that I had sponsored in Florida they had no idea if I was alive, dead, where I was. So they were very, very upset for a few years before they accepted my amends. And now we talk every day. Did the financials. There were some I didn't even remember about when I first did my 4th and 5th step. So a couple have crept in over the years where it's like, that is aha, where the clouds part, and all of a sudden you just remember a resentment that you had, or a harm that you did, or an amends that you needed to make. You just go out and make them. Talk to your sponsor, say, hey, I forgot. Or this didn't come to mind, because you can't remember everything that you did anyway. when you're doing a fourth and fifth step. It's just about being as thorough and honest with the information you do have. And in doing so, this just brought me a lot closer to people. Brought me a lot closer to God. Helped me become even more vulnerable, more open, and more about others. I'm going to try and do these fast because there's only a couple minutes left. Do I want to do them fast? Anyway, there's a lot I could talk about with the men's, right? But that's where I truly started to become free of the past, where I could start living in the present. Because you cannot start living in the present until you get rid of the past. Now, when I say get rid of it, I don't mean get rid of it. I mean face it, take accountability, and move on. Because the past is the past, the future is the future, you only have today, right? And I want to be present. I want to live in the here and the now. The rocketed into the fourth dimension, and that's kind of what that's referring to, being in the here and the now. And you can't do that if you're stuck from things from the past, right? You're still in the bondage of self. And I still, even though I made those amends, I still live those amends to this day. Because whatever these people told me I needed to do to make it right, I have that responsibility to do. Some of them said, just keep doing what you're doing. Well, that means I got to keep doing what I'm doing, right? My recovery life looks exactly the same now as it did when I first came in, except there's more understanding and effectiveness, right? I have sponsees now that I didn't have in the first couple months that I was sober, but I still go to meetings 4 to 5 times a week. I have plenty of sponsees who are sitting here, right? Still talk to my sponsor. So if I was doing that back then, I have to continue to do that as part of my amends process, right? If not, I'm not living up to my amends. And there's nothing worse than in recovery than having to make amends to somebody that you already made an amends to before because you didn't live up to your agreement of whatever to do to make it right. 10 is a lifesaver. To this day, it's very simple. For complicated people like us, right, we continue to watch for certain things to crop up. It gives you, I think, 3 specific things, but for me, it's anything. That's a defect. When they do crop up, bring God in right away. Talk to someone quickly. The reason being is I can't always see the truth when it's in front of me. I still need to be held accountable. I still need to talk to my sponsor because I might be seeing this and he might be like, oh, by the way, you're missing this stuff, right? Did I cause harm? No? Okay, then go be of service. If I did cause harm, go make a quick amends, be of service. That's the 10-step instruction. And that has brought me back from the brinks of insanity when I have been off in whatever way, right? Because we're not perfect, right? Still have moments of frustration, moments of fear, moments of anger, right? But when those things crop up, or selfishness or whatever, and the awareness is there, I have a responsibility to do those actions. And anytime I take those actions, it gets removed. At some point along that process. Sometimes it happens as soon as I bring God in. Sometimes it happens when I talk to my sponsor. Sometimes it happens once I go make an amends. If amends wasn't made, then it happens when I make service. At some point in time, it gets removed. But I have to do all those things for it to happen. Step 11, prayer and meditation, game changer. Game changer. My relationship by step 11 with the God of my understanding, and my understanding of that relationship is a lot different by the time I get to step 11 than what it was at step 3. Right? I have a responsibility in the morning to wake up, connect with the God of my understanding. Ask for guidance. Reflect on my day and throw it out there and hope that I receive something back in meditation. Right? Because to me, prayer is the easy part. Prayer is talking. Meditation is about listening. And I don't know about you guys. Prior to coming into alcohol, even today, we have sometimes problems with listening. Right? So meditation is what really taught me how to listen a little bit better. Right? That doesn't mean that every time I meditated, I got an answer right then and there in meditation. Usually, sometimes, there was a feeling in the pit of my stomach that gave me some direction, right? Direct conscious contact with God. But my God doesn't just talk to me directly. My God also talks through you guys, through situations. So at some point in time throughout the day, something is revealed that I had actually meditated about that helps me take a course correction. One of the things, and I'm not sitting here saying I'm perfect, it's always a work in progress. Always a work in progress. Why? Because I'm an undisciplined person. And it tells me in the book, we are undisciplined, so allow God to discipline. Right? The more and more I keep practicing, even if I make little mistakes with it, it comes. Right? The tricky part about step 11 isn't the nightly review. That's the safety net if you don't practice a 10th step, is that nightly review. Right? The tricky part of step 11 is that pause when agitated part. Still learning about that. And I always will be. Like, my understanding of these steps should always change and grow. If I'm ever at a point where I'm like, I got this, I know everything, da-da-da-da-da, I'm already in trouble. I'm already in trouble and don't even know it. Pause when agitated. And if you look up the word in the dictionary, it doesn't mean when you're angry. Because people easily associate agitated with angry. It means anything that's troubling the mind. It could be fear, it could be worry, it could be self-pity, it could be a ton of different things. And why do I need to pause when agitated? Because I can easily go off a cliff if I'm angry or fearful or this or that. And it doesn't even have to do with a drink. Just my reaction to life or internal reactions. And if I do that pause when agitated, hopefully what comes in is that self-awareness kick, which self-awareness means nothing either if you don't take action. But hopefully that self-awareness comes in like, hey, I need to bring God in. I need to step back and bring God in and breathe. I need to talk to another alcoholic real quick to help right-size me again. It's a work in progress. It's great when it happens right away, but usually comes 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes sometimes for me. Maybe even a couple hours every now and then. But the crazy thing is I can create enough damage in that time frame, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, until that happens. So it's very important to consistently bring in God, this program, and my sponsor and other people. Right? Because anytime I do, I get right-sized at some point in time in that process. Step 12, having a spiritual awakening. It's not meant to be a one-time thing. Hey, I'm spiritually awake now. No, it's supposed to be continued to be cultivated. We're supposed to continue to perfect and enlarge our spiritual life. I think it says that in Bill's story, if I'm not mistaken, towards the end. Right? Not only do I have to have a spiritual awakening, I have to continue to grow and build and cultivate that with all the things that I've already talked about. Right? And then I got to carry the message. Right? A lot of people like to do a 2-step. 1 and 12. No. Right? Only way I can carry a message is if I'm practicing all this stuff. Right? Because if I'm not, there's going to be a disconnect. When I'm trying to sponsor or help another, and then I'll blame them because they're not under. No, it's because if I'm not continuing to grow in this process, I'm not going to have a great message to carry. And the message isn't just words, it's actions. It's heart to heart. Connective tissue that you will feel, whether it's shaking people's hands, setting up a meeting, asking a person how they're doing, even if you don't know. I tell my sponsee, and 2 of them are here, you can ask them. I tell them all the time. When it comes to like that last part of step 10, I tell them, reach out to somebody you don't talk to regularly. Because that's taking the easy, cheap, soft way. Reach out to somebody you don't know. Ask them how their day is. Ask them how you can be helpful. And then the most hardest part, practice these principles in all my affairs. I do my best to try. No, let me rephrase it. I do my best to put forth the effort. Sometimes my effort is great. Sometimes my effort needs improvement. But that's the way it's meant to be. Spiritual progress, not perfection. You hear it misused all the time. Progress, not perfection. That's not what the book says. It says spiritual progress, not perfection. Meaning, am I better off today than I was 4 months ago? Or am I still kind of like, am I better than I was a year ago? 2 years ago. Like, I should constantly be moving forward in this process. And sometimes it takes mistakes. Sometimes it takes falling down on my face. Sometimes it takes successes. But ultimately what it takes is all of us doing it together. Right? Because I don't know how to without this. So I have a responsibility to be the driving force in my own program of action. I'm not responsible for any of yours. You're not responsible for mine. What we're supposed to do for each other is hold each other accountable and help each other, right? And be supportive of each other, whether that's giving each other a swift kick in the butt when we need it or a hug when we need it. But ultimately, I have to be the driving force in my program of action, meaning I'm the one that has to take the action. I'm the one that has to put forth the effort. And as long as I do, I have a chance to live a great life. Instead of being hopeless, I am now full of hope. I'm a living example of hope. Instead of living in misery, I now have peace. Right? Instead of being lost, I am now found. Instead of being alone, I am now connected. And that's what this program is all about. Thanks for letting me share.
Okay, again, my name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic. First and foremost, I want to thank Chris for coming out here, delivering an incredible message of hope and recovery to our group here tonight. A couple quick announcements and we'll wrap it up. Again, as was stated before the meeting, the food and the fellowship for this group always starts at 8 o'clock. We always got the refreshments, the coffee out, so feel free to join us early. Just come here, socialize. If you do want to get involved with this group, we have service positions available. We can always use help setting up the meeting or whatever we got going on. There's always a meeting after the meeting, so I always say, if you're new or if you're struggling or if you're out there and you've been coming around for a while and it's just not working, get with us after the meeting. We'd love to talk to you, get you some phone numbers, some meetings to go to. Thanks to everybody for helping out with the meeting. Thanks to our greeters, our readers. Thank you to our coffee maker, Howard. It is customary for us to thank our speakers as they come here on their own time and expense to share their experience, strength, and hope with us. So we usually do form a line in the front here, and we thank our speakers personally. And to close out the meeting, let's thank our speaker, Chris, one more time. And, if you do care to join us, we have a beautiful way of closing. As always, we'll close down the meeting with a brief moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholic inside and outside of these rooms, followed by our Lord's Prayer. Our Father,